But I want to get your perspective on Fluminense and this Club World Cup. I mean, what would it mean for the tournament if Flu make it past Chelsea into a final?
Well, I think that's a great question, Mike. I think firstly for the tournament, I think it would mean it's a success. I think until this point, it has already been a success. But I think to see a team that's outside of Europe make it that far after so much time in Club World Cups, I think the last victory by a Brazilian was in 2012, I think Corinthians. And just to see that there's football all over the world, I think would be a huge plus for FIFA and for football. From the Brazilian landscape, I think it may be hyperbole, but I think Fluminense in the final reignites Brazil's belief in their potential to compete at the highest level and perhaps restore some self-image, some self-esteem amidst some difficulties at the Seleção. I don't think their Carioca and Rio de Janeiro rivals would see Fluminense's success as such, but I think outside of that city, I think for the rest of us, they are certainly carrying Brazil's flag, and we're delighted to see how well they're doing and certainly do hope that they make it into the final.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the likes of Botafogo, of Flamengo, of the Brazilian teams that were in this Club World Cup, Fluminense, Mbizo probably was the one on the outside looking in because they have the least budget from everybody else. But I kind of like the storyline going into this game because Renato Gaúcho, their manager, has been like the defiant Latino against the Europeans at this Club World Cup. He historically has dismerited the Italian football when he played there, saying that it's pure catenaccio. They just loft it forward and drop back. He manages to progress into the semifinals. So it does feel like this is a refreshing take from Renato going into the semi-final.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to remember that, Fluminense is not even the best team in Brazil, as you mentioned, very much an outsider, nor do they currently have the best Brazilian players, in my opinion. And they're competing against some of the best from other countries, national team players. And of course, football is a lot more complex than that, but there is certainly a psychological impact there. However, I would advise Renato to take it back a notch because he's actually been winning, or rather been progressing with something that's close to and similar to catenaccio, because Fluminense has done this with very little possession. I mean, am I right? They suffered versus Sundowns with very little possession. They suffered versus Inter with the same. They had less possession than Al Hilal and Dortmund. But the point is they're getting the job done. And I think their experience has been invaluable. His experience as well has been invaluable. His temperament, his perspective, and his defiance is the word that I think you used, which is a perfect description.
Well, he's doing it in a different way. This Flu side, if you're seeing, age is just a number. Well, they have one of the oldest sides in the Club World Cup. I think 6 of their players in their 11 are, 34 and older. They're going against a Chelsea side that they're the young bucks of this Club World Cup. I mean, what sort of advantage does age and the experience of this togetherness of this Flu side that's been there and done that, Libertadores, have potentially against Chelsea?
Yes, spot on there, Mikey. I once discussed my concern about Fluminense's age on Golazo. I referred to it as a retirement home with a lot of players coming back from Europe. And last year, they actually struggled in the Brazilian League. And I think that was perhaps because of how many games they had and the age and the wear and tear. They've been a bit better this year. And I think it's because they have played less games. And of course, contrary to most public intimations, Brazilian teams play more football than European teams. And so that has really worn on them, I think, when they've been playing down here in Brazil. But in the World Club Cup, this experience, this wisdom, it's been extremely valuable. I mean, if you think about how Thiago Silva was able to change the game versus Al Hilal and advise Renato Gaúcho on what he believes the tactical approach should be because of what's happening on the field. I mean, these are things that you can only get from experienced, from older players who are all understanding, who have all all been through this. And again, like I said, when you're at that age where you've been through so much, you not only know how to play, but you also know how to soak up pressure and how to suffer. Down here in Brazil, they refer to teams being able to suffer to get the victory. It's a very Libertadores type approach, type idea to getting the job done, even when the football is not so beautiful. And I think Fluminense has been able to do that while also demonstrating that they do have talent, they do have players, they do have football, and they are Brazilian after all.
Yeah, listen, and talk about Libertadores. And Renato's been to a Libertadores final not once, but twice. The very first time with Grêmio, taking them all the way, right? It was pretty impressive. And you talk about that experience. I look at a guy like Thiago Silva, not only the experience, but the leadership qualities as well. Getting everybody to believe in that dressing room, get on board. You look at a guy like Germán Cano, which we haven't mentioned, their goal scorer, a record-breaking goal scorer for Fluminense, arguably in the best form of his career in his late 30s, right? So it's just pretty incredible to see how it all kind of comes together with Fluminense. But then you pair it with a guy like John Arias, for example, on Fluminense, a younger Colombian player that's kind of starting to really make a name for himself. Already been on the national team, but he's really that difference maker. In Spanish, I really like the word that we use, el diferente, the different one. Who's gonna
Diferenciado.
be that? O diferenciado in Portuguese. Who's gonna be that guy? And oftentimes for Fluminense, if it's gonna be anybody in Mbizo, it's gonna be John Arias.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, he's demonstrated his quality. I've been a huge fan of his for quite some time. And down here, people already know of his talent, know of his quality. In fact, many Brazilian fans might argue that he's the best player in the Brazilian league at the moment. I'm not so sure that I would necessarily share that perspective, but he's certainly among the top ones. So his performances for us who are familiar with his game has not been surprising. So like I said, there is talent, not just in Brazil, but all over the world, and that's been on display vis-a-vis teams like Fluminense, vis-a-vis teams like Sundowns, who perhaps fell out, but certainly demonstrated that they can play against the best.
Now, when we get to knockout competition, yes, strikers win you matches, but goalkeepers and center backs, they're usually the difference. And Flu, they have a very experienced goalkeeper in Fábio. I mean, the guy's defying father time. He keeps getting better and better with each match that he plays, and he's on the verge of achieving history within the calendar year. I mean, he's 8 shy of equaling Peter Shelton, I believe, his all-time professional appearance record. I mean, what would it be and what would it mean for a goalkeeper like that, not just to get this record, but to put in another stellar performance against the likes of Chelsea?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's the oldest goalkeeper in the world, right? Something like over 1,300 matches, 150 for Fluminense, some 790 for Cruzeiro, which a lot of people forget is one of the giants of Brazilian football. He's certainly not a household name, but he is among the legends of Brazilian football. And he actually does join along an illustrious list of players who've never played for the Seleção, despite having such an incredible body of work. He joins the likes of Alex, Marcelinho Carioca, Neto, who just simply never had space. But again, despite his comparative lack of fame, he's one of Brazil's greatest goalkeepers of all time. But it is also, I think, important to note and put in perspective that in Brazil, there's always existed this dichotomy of young and old, which Fluminense is demonstrating for us at this cup. Players in their prime from Brazil are exported to Europe. It's still one of the largest exporters of footballers on the globe. And so you have your young, talented, and some of the best going to Europe, but then you have some of these older players who are either returning from Europe or who've spent their entirety of their career here in Brazil. And you'll have this, there's this 16-year-old, 17-year-old who's coming into the limelight, and then you'll have this 44-year-old, 45-year-old who's now at the end of his career, but has done incredible things and has helping the clubs continue to rise. And so it's such a typical demonstration of what it means to be a Brazilian football, for what it means to be a player in Brazil. And it's just beautiful to see. And we all obviously hope that he does smash any records that are still left to hit.
Yeah, he's still got a lot of football left to be played. And Mbizo, thank you very much. Obrigado, that's right?
Obrigado meu irmão. De
muito.
nada.
Valeu.
De nada.
Valeu. Obrigado, valeu. Okay.
Wonderful, boys.
That's
Wonderful.
CBS Sports Brazilian football analyst Mbizo Mzamane. Thank you as always. Now, Nico, we're going to do a little bit of all 22, and you're really high on this flu side. And you talked about some of the big storylines, so take us through it.
Yeah, I think the biggest storyline of them all is Martinelli suspended, right? A center midfielder that would pop in there where Hercules is at the moment. I go back to that Fluminense side that won the Copa Libertadores 2 seasons ago. And the midfield pair was Andre, who's now at Wolves, and Martinelli. They were very positional-based Fluminense that loved to keep the ball. And I would imagine they're going to do a little bit of holding down the fort against Chelsea. But obviously, we spoke about those difference makers right here in John Arias and Germán Cano, the goal scorer and the playmaker. If they're going to have any sort of surprise here, it's going to come down to those two on top of an incredible defensive performance.
Yeah, Thiago Silva has been outstanding, as you said. No Freitas, so Fuentes, I think that's going to be the back four that we see right there. They could also play this back five that's made the difference.
Yeah,
on the opposite side.
More than a back, I think it would be more of a back five against Chelsea.
Yeah.
Personally.
Look, on the opposite side, the big question mark for Chelsea is who's going to fill in for Liam Delap? João Pedro, or is it Nicholas Jackson, who's back from being on the naughty list? I think João Pedro, he's going to be the guy, although he just came off the beach as well. What I saw from him in his cameo, that he came off the bench, there was an urgency, there was a sense of setting the press, and he's that sort of player that if you want to unlock Cole Palmer, as we saw in the first goal, I think you put him up there because he can float between the gaps. He can get the likes of Pedro Neto, who's been excellent this tournament, and Christopher Nkunku looks like he might have a future with some of the transfer speculation on Noni Madueke at Chelsea.
Crazy to think that Nico Jackson started in this Club World Cup on match day 1, and by the end of it might be the third string striker on this team. The other big note for Chelsea is that Moises Caicedo is back from suspension, right? And that partnership with Enzo Fernandez, this holding midfielder position, it could be some of the best in the Premier League. Moises Caicedo was Chelsea's best player last season. You know, he has lived up to that price tag. And when you say, what, $100+ million defensive midfielder, what can he give you to live up to that price tag? Masterful performances like he's been putting together. He's the heart and soul of this Chelsea